Hello everyone and welcome to this 27th episode of Forte, Strong Queens. I'm Mélanie and I'm with Judy, and we've seen each other a couple of weeks ago, like two weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, for the training that we had an interview with specialist Anthony Lowe, physiotherapist Anthony Lowe, and it was a pleasure first to get to know him and know a bit about him beforehand on the podcast, but it was really cool to meet him in real life and get to do the female athlete training here in Montreal. I think it was 2 weekends ago, so 20 something
April 21st and 22nd, I believe.
Yeah, and it was here in Montreal in U&I training, but Anthony, I think he's actually doing his 73rd female athlete course. I saw this on his page today, so I guess he's traveling all over the world to give the same training with, I'm guessing, a little bit of differences because of who is there to take the training and all these questions and stuff that we bring to when we take the training. It was epic. It was awesome. We learned a lot of stuff, and that's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, we want to do kind of a review about what the training is like, what the experience was like, who was there. So, like Mélanie said, it was at U&I training in Pointe-Saint-Charles?
Yeah, Griffintown?
It's
unclear.
It's near, it's on St. Patrick, right?
Yeah.
It's on St. Patrick near Alley Up,
canal,
the climbing gym and the canal. A really great location. And we did 2 full days. We arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning and we're there until 5:30 at night.
Yeah. Long days.
So who was there? There were a lot of pelvic floor physios.
Yeah.
And some regular physios, or some people who do pelvic floor and other types of physio work, but lots of physios. Let's just use that term in general.
Yeah.
And then a good amount of fitness coaches.
Yeah,
like
a couple. I would say
5 or 6.
Yeah, maybe a little less than a third. Like, a couple. Mostly people who works in gyms and do private classes or group classes.
So people from the health and fitness industry, except for myself.
And you.
I was really, I was the only person there who didn't have any like professional tie to the material, except that I actually learned a lot about, I'm going to talk about this, a lot about coaching and communication, and it was really reaffirming for me in a lot of different ways. So I'm excited to share an opinion of just a member of the general public and how the coaching ended up having a really big impact on me. Yeah.
I was just going to say that they were also, like, everybody was really impressed and, like, happy to see that there was someone from the public trying to learn stuff that maybe has nothing to do with your work, but was still interesting to you, and you got a lot out of it. Yeah, like, I'm guessing. Yeah, as we talked a bit before.
So tell me what were the highlights for you? What did you get? What's really staying with you since you've taken the training? What has stayed with you?
I think there's a lot of, like, it goes on different ends of the spectrum. Like, first of all, in my work, like, for sure it helped a lot because, as Anthony says really well, and he said it a lot during the weekend, I'm already good at what I'm doing. Like, we're all already good at what we're doing. We're just trying to find ways to do something a little bit different and improve ourselves by having a better contact with the person in front of us. And for me, that's it gears towards that. It's like, maybe there are times, and I know particularly like here in the podcast, it might have shown, like, sometimes it's easy to say, I know that, therefore I know how it works. And it's always like, this answer fits for this type of problem.
Yeah, like, go outside every morning and get your sunlight and you'll be fine forever. But
and exactly.
But it's not as simple as that.
Exactly. It's like, maybe I think it's something, it's an experience thing. Like, the more experience you have, the more you know how complicated it can be. Maybe when you don't know as much, like, maybe when your view of things is a bit more narrow, therefore you're gonna just, like, pick into the stuff that you know. So you're like, oh, it could be this or that or maybe that. So you have like 3 or 4 options of what the problem might be or what might be the reason behind whatever cause, whatever symptom your client has, or whatever, yeah, pain your client has. But actually, it could be way more than what we know or what I knew. And I used to be a little bit more like, oh, that's what it is. And you just do that and it's going to be better.
Yeah.
But it's actually so much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And even doctors and like, if you think in a biopsychosocial way, like if you're trying to help people in a way that takes into consideration that their mental state has an effect on their body, their emotional state has an impact on their body, their energetical state has an impact on their body. Therefore, you cannot say the reason why you have pain is A, because you might put this person with the same symptom next to another person and it's for totally different reason why they have pain.
Yeah.
So it kind of taught me to be a little bit less. It doesn't mean that I'm not certain of what I say in front of people. On the opposite, I just know now that there are no right answers. There's often many different answers that are right, and it's okay if it's not fixed and set in stone, and if you explore solutions. And it's also okay if something should not be working theoretically, but if it works, it works.
Yeah.
So stop asking yourself 24,000 questions or trying to find the right solution. Maybe if the person has no pain, then it's just don't try to fix it, you know?
Well, and we experience this in a way that I think will be very concrete to explain, which is there's certain technique associated with certain weightlifting movements.
Yeah.
Or you could say certain yoga poses.
Yeah.
Or certain movements in specific sports. So if you're doing a squat and your feet are supposed to be like placed at a certain width apart to have like the right squat, and then your feet are supposed to be at the right angles and all this stuff. But say somebody is uncomfortable in that position, but they're so focused on it being the right position.
Yeah.
But say a coach comes along and is able to look at them and say, oh, well, what happens if you move your feet further apart? What happens if you turn one foot out a little bit more? What happens if you do this? So then you're moving away from what like a so-called perfect squat looks like, but you're creating a squat that fits that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was really a huge message.
Absolutely.
Was to get to a place where you have found something that's working for that person in this moment, because that thing will probably evolve and change over time, but not putting everything into a box and saying, oh, you have these symptoms. It's either this or this, kind of having a checklist to diagnose. And I mean, this happens in business as well. Like somebody who's having a productivity problem at work, say they're not producing as much. You come along with like, oh, well, it's because you're not using these tools properly, or it's because you're not doing this properly. And you go on and on and on. And all you're doing is stressing the heck out of that person when there's 1,000 other things that
we're stressing the person in the first place, which made them not productive.
Because productivity is not just about statistics and numbers. It's often viewed that way in business, just as, you know, athletic performance is not just about stats or your weight or numbers or whatever. It's so that was a really cool message that came across, and it's being curious, having the guts to say, I don't know, but I'm going to do everything I can to figure it out. Yeah. Really going off the beaten path.
Yeah. And not trying to, like, I don't know, but I don't care if I don't know. Is it working? Yes. Then it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't need the explanation, the scientific reasoning behind why when you jump, your pelvic floor feels bad in that way and not in that way. You cannot always explain it. Sometimes it's placebo, or it's emotional, or it's circumstantial, and it still works. So stop trying to fix it. You know, you're not there to fix people. I also and I know it's going to be linked to what you got from the training too, but it's also a vocabulary thing. And this is something that when we had the podcast, when we had Anthony on the podcast in the first place, I was like, oh yeah, it's like tools in the toolbox. And he's like, yeah, I don't really like toolboxes because we're not machines, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, this was in the first place, I was like, oh yeah, oh, I did the wrong thing. I said the wrong thing. But right now, it just became something that is way more freeing than that. It's just, nobody has a problem. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, you're not wrong if you have pain. You're not doing something wrong. Like, we are stressed enough. We are feeling unworthy enough. We are feeling imposter enough in life.
Yeah.
For someone to come and tell you that your problem is your feet or your problem is your breathing. Like, can you imagine if you're told that you're not breathing properly? What is like, this is like the most basic thing you should be doing without thinking about it, and then you add it to the list of stuff that you should be thinking about doing fine because you're not doing it right already in the first place. So this is an example for me, like in yoga, or it's just the way you're saying the thing to the person that you have in front of you is very important, and words matter. And I mean, I love words. I studied literature. I don't know why it never appeared to me such clearly before, but there is a power to the way you talk about stuff to people, especially when they come to you for advice, which is my case. Like every class I finish teaching, I have like 20 minutes of talking with clients at the end because they're talking about their feet or whatever, or their knees or their back, and they want advice because, you know, they know not too much about anatomy and their bodies. And so it's important that you don't make them feel like they have a bigger list of things to do in their day, and that they have more problems to work on than they already had when they came in the first place into your class or your meeting or whatever, you know?
Well, Anthony said on the podcast that he did, the episode we did with him, how important terminology and word choice is to him. And I've had people talk about my breathing before, and I hold myself to such a high standard that when someone comes along and it's like, are you doing this wrong? It's like, I choose how I react to it. Of course, like I can be like, okay, yeah, you're talking about my problem, but I know it's not a problem. So there's a certain aspect now, like I know I can control that emotional reaction, but it doesn't feel good. It's like, what? I've been working on my breathing for so long.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean there's something wrong with it? Because I literally had been trying, I thought I was doing a good job. So it's that not viewing things as if they are a problem, but viewing them as
part of a
just
process
in a more positive light. I mean, my left leg has always caused, it's always like been viewed as a weakness by me, and I realized like lately, like continuing to view it like that is holding me back completely. And if I just change my perspective, it changes everything. Like all of a sudden I can do my exercises without pain.
Yeah.
So that also, I think after the training, it was easier to come to that positive side of things, the positive image, because of this idea, like it's not a problem. It's just something that is going on, and there's probably a way to make it better. It's just, it's not going to happen like overnight, or maybe it will, but it's part of the journey.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily by trying to fix it like right now, or maybe like being mean to yourself because you didn't think about it fast enough, or I mean, stuff goes differently. Like right side and left side of our bodies are always going to be unbalanced. Like there's always going to be a discrepancy between the both of them. So yes, there's one part that is a bit slower than the other, and maybe you're not there yet, but it doesn't mean that the left side is like you're always all your life going to be weaker on the left side than on the right side.
But if I continue to think that way,
it's something you just record in your head.
Not
improve.
Right?
Yeah.
It will not improve.
And you'll get stuck to these thinkings. It's so funny because this weekend I was having a drink with yoga teachers, friends and colleagues of mine from yoga club, and one of my colleagues was doing, she was doing during the weekend a Pilates training, teacher training, and the teacher was making comments about the size of her belly in front of people. She was, but obviously, like, I don't want to say anything against Pilates, but it was like this skinny lady who was saying that she had a fat belly in front of people that are maybe fatter than her.
Yeah.
And then she's talking about herself in a negative way. So how do you feel about yourself when you're listening to her, first of all? And then she was using the students as examples of, oh, you can see now she's like really tight in her hips, or using the students as examples of what is good or wrong. And it actually is something that, you know, the girl was saying, like, you can just record that in your head and just use, like, oh yeah, my hips are tight now because this lady once told me that, and now it's something that is part of me. Like, I could almost put it on my resume, like, oh, my hips are tight because somebody told me once that my hips are tight.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time. It's like, oh no, I have a shoulder problem. I've always had my shoulder problem.
Yeah, so it's part of me. It's part of who I am, and that's it.
The thing that marked me the most the whole weekend was on the first day, and he did a consult with one of the women from the group. And it was when the consult was over, the thing that struck me the most was how he spoke to her. And it looked like this effortless sort of doing nothing thing, and he was just asking her questions, and he was listening, and he wasn't prescribing or telling her what was wrong with her. He was letting her share what she felt comfortable sharing, and pushing her when he thought that she might go there, but then also giving her space when it seemed like, oh, maybe that's a subject for another conversation, not trying to like tackle everything all at once, but making her feel safe and making her see her own body. And I think that this is like basic communication skills. If you are trying to help somebody, or if you're trying to have a conversation with your partner at home, and there's a behavior that you see that you don't like employee, partner, child, like whatever, okay? There's something that you don't like. If you arrive and you're like, there's a problem, like we have to fix this. Which is basically what happens when you go see many health practitioners. Like you go because you have a problem and you want to get it fixed. That person they don't feel safe. But if you can ask questions, if you can make them feel safe, if you can bring them to a place of, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, I see. You will move them. That's the power to move them, because they can see it for themselves. But they will not see it if you tell them that it's this way. It's like giving advice, is parenting advice at the park. You're like, we just had such a hard time. My child was just like, wasn't listening and screaming. And, you know what really works for me is this. It's like, well, that's great. But I actually just want to share that I'm not feeling very good. Like, I don't really want a solution. Like, believe me, I've tried a lot of different things. So there was that aspect in this, the consult that he did in front of us. And it was the power of how he communicated with her. And this is surprisingly not what is being used in business, at home,
in health,
it's always like, okay, it's this, do this, or like, you are this way and you must change, so do this. And it creates a lot of conflict. And so I really admire what Anthony has done, because he's created a space to make things like, it's more holistic, to make things more lasting. Like the kind of progress you can make when you tackle issues, problems, situations with this kind of facilitation, good communications, empathy, safety thing, you will get better results. But is this the harder road? Yes.
Ben oui. Because you have to put yourself as a therapist, or as a coach, or as a teacher, or as a boss, or as someone who's trying, like, let's say in a relationship, you're trying to lead the relationship somewhere or the situation
Yeah.
somewhere, you have, you bear, like, you have something in mind. Let's say you have a goal or you see a path. You're not going to take the person by the hand and bring them on the path and pull them with you.
Yeah.
You just want the person to see the same path as you and maybe get inspired to go along with you
Yeah.
on the path. It's super metaphorical.
No, but it's so true.
But it's like
It's
this,
leadership.
He was just using very simple questions, like he was barely saying anything. Because in that case, it's not for him, it's for her. So it was good to just see how she was connecting the dots by herself and how it was actually just more humane questions, like more like, how do you see yourself, or where do you see yourself in the future, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
It was not about like, where exactly is the pain, how do you feel precisely, what sensation is this, blah blah blah. It was like very open. So
Yeah.
she walked the path by herself.
Yeah.
And she's a physio, like the person who was doing the consult. She can do the path. She can do the links by herself. She can do the work by herself after that. And it's actually what you want to, like, if you really want to help people, you want to make sure that they don't come back. They don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
Even in the relationship, it's the same thing. You don't want to be the bearer of truth and always be the one who's always there to fix
No, I mean,
the situation.
Yeah.
At some point, for kids, it's exactly that. You want your kids to be able to make great decisions by themselves at some point without you having to tell them brush your teeth or whatever. So by trying to teach, it's so hard. It's so hard, though, to just put your ego aside as a helper, or as a teacher or leader.
That's so great. Yeah.
Put yourself aside. Yeah. It's not about you. It's not your ego. Like, whatever you think has absolutely no impact, because I know what I know already.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell it to convince someone of it. The person has to...
You get to use your knowledge to help guide them. But you must guide them on a path that is appropriate for them.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really, that was a huge takeaway.
Yeah, yeah.
And another thing along those lines is he was talking in the... So fitness, kind of sports coaching, but even in the physio world, you give cues to your clients about how to move, how to do things. So it's instructions about what you want to see in the movement. But this, if you are standing beside your client and being like, oh, you need to move your knee like just 2 inches to the right, and then make sure that it is aligned exactly with your middle toe, not your big toe, your middle toe, or your second toe. And, giving all of these like super complex cues that you have read in a book somewhere that are the cues that you're supposed to give.
Yeah. Or at school.
And it's also about doing what works, right? If those cues are not working, like, how can you adjust the cue to make it easier for people to understand? How can you adjust the cue to make people like be able to succeed and do the movement? And I was thinking about teaching my son how to ski.
Yeah.
Children, if you are just barking instructions at them, which is so hard not to do. It's just like, it's hard not to do that when you're coaching someone, because you can see it all happening and you're like, oh my God, they're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're like, no, pizza, do the pizza, which I definitely did my fair share of yelling, but I tried to keep myself in check because I realized very fast, like, he was not responding to anything I was saying. And actually saying nothing was way better.
Yeah.
And I would pick like a few key moments to be like, it looks like you're having a really hard time stopping. Would you like some help with stopping? And he wouldn't really answer, and he'd just like grumble and get up, and I'd be like, okay, at least he knows like that is a possibility. I could help you. And we actually had a super successful time skiing, and I attribute it to my I was able to keep myself in check enough. And I really give my dad credit for this, because he was like, when you take him skiing, know that he will respond better if you just don't say anything. I was like, okay, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
And
he did it with you probably when you were a kid.
Well, yeah. I mean, my dad's really great with kids. So that was also really powerful. It's like, how do you talk to people? What are the instructions you are giving to people? What are your expectations of them? How do you communicate that so that they can see their own power, which is another really beautiful part of this training, is helping people see what they have to bring, what they already have, how much they can do, what they're capable of. There were a lot of women who were like we were jumping onto boxes
Oh, yeah,
and
that was great.
deadlifting,
Yeah.
and I had like never even tried to do a double under because, which is a jump roping thing in CrossFit, because I was like, oh, it's too hard and I don't do CrossFit
Oh, you
and
were
whatever.
so good.
But I like can jump super high and do a double under just
Yeah.
fine. So
Yeah.
I mean, I can't do 50 in a row, but that wasn't the
it
goal.
was-
It was
yeah,
like
exactly.
there were so many moments where almost all of the participants, I think, were like, wow, I can do this. And there were always variations provided, and it was always adapted, and it was really like that part was super cool too.
Yeah, yeah. And it was great for, I think, actually, I don't know if Anthony is ever going to come back to Montreal. Hopefully he will, because he has his partner who organized the training here, Casey Baines, which we thank a lot because it's because of her we did the training in the first place. But she's here in Montreal. She's an amazing power lifter, like a world champion, and now she's also a mom. So, but maybe because of her presence here in Montreal, he's going to be back maybe in next year or maybe in a couple
it
of
would
years.
be really cool for him
So
to come back.
it's like the greatest thing about it, I feel, is like everybody took something, I'm sure, out of this experience, like I did and you did, and it was very different because we're not doing the same thing in our day-to-day lives. But I feel like it's for everyone. Even men could have been there. Like, yes, we're talking about female pelvic floors, but it, like, we all have one, you know? And
yeah, everybody has a pelvic floor,
Yeah.
indeed. And lots of men coach women. So
Yeah.
it's extremely relevant for men to take the coaching, to take this training. But he has other trainings on his website that go deeper into like the role of the coach and moving people. Something called, like one called Peak Simplicity or something. There's more, like as an overall approach to coaching, it was a really awesome experience. And because I'm very interested in coaching, I coach my employees.
yeah.
I'm teaching my kids. I felt it was really relevant to me, even though I spent like a big part of the time being like, I feel like I really like I mean I understand what they're talking about, but like, should I really be here? And by the end of the weekend, I was really glad that I was there, because I have spent a lot of time learning about a lot of the different movements, and I really like, it's been life-changing for me. So even though I'm not in the health and fitness industry, I still got a lot out of it. And the stuff, I think, we did get a lot of the same things out of it because we would just spend a bunch of time talking about the same things. So. But
it was great.
I don't think we mentioned this one really, and we can conclude on this, the do something different.
Oh, yeah.
This
I
is
started
like,
with that, but yeah, let's close with it.
did you start with it?
But I just said that doing something different. Yeah, I
Yeah,
said
you
it
did.
in the first
You
place.
did say it. Sorry. Okay, well,
but I didn't explain that it was the whole.
But it's
like,
a huge it's a cornerstone of the whole weekend, and it is it's that curiosity, that always challenging yourself. You're taking your current knowledge and then testing it, like getting the experience over knowledge. That's another thing that he talks about a lot, experience over knowledge, and do something different, which is, I think, really freeing. It frees you of that sort of like expectation that you have to get it right every single time.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing something different. You're trying these things. You're already good at your job.
Yeah.
So it was really, it was empowering, I think, for all of the participants.
Yeah, for sure. And especially in the health and fitness industry, or like in this world of people having pain and coming to see you, they have maybe seen other people before you.
Yeah.
And have not gotten the results they were looking for. People came to see you because they had something that they didn't get, like, that didn't get better with other people. So obviously, if you're doing the same classical things, following the same protocols, following the same checklist, then you're going to get the same, it should be right, results that everybody else is getting, but it's obviously not working for that person. So, like, for me, it was an eye-opener, but I think it applies to everyone.
It does. It does.
And it's funny, I maybe, like, we talked about this during the training, but since it was all like a lot of physios, a lot of people who are very, very full of knowledge, like very intelligent, very like aware, and like they like reading like studies and stuff like that. And he was bringing everyone into that kind of creative side of their brain.
Yeah.
Like explode the barriers and go get your stuff from a little bit of everywhere. And for me, it was validating because, and it's validating for you too, because we're doing physio stuff that helps you with your like translation job, you know, like you're already outside of the box. And for me, like what box, you know, like there's no, I've done so many different things. So
well, and you're an artist.
Yeah, my brain is an artist's brain. So for me, it was validating that, oh, it's okay if you're not just good at one thing.
Yeah.
It's okay if you're not just like very, very like you've studied very hard on one subject for like you went to university for one thing. It's okay if you know a little bit of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because in the end, there's no one like discipline that's gonna fix everything.
Yeah. That's great.
You know? So being a little bit like out there, being a little bit creative is actually like a strength, you know?
Yeah.
And I knew it was a strength when I'm doing theater, but I didn't think it was a strength in like the health and fitness world. So it's kind of cool, yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. It's like there's tons more to say, but I think we got really the essential bits. It's a fantastic course, and Anthony has lots of stuff online.
Yeah.
He's called the Physio Detective.
Yes.
We'll put all of his details in the notes.
Yes. So please go check him out. You can follow him on Instagram if you're interested. And thank you I just want to say thank you to everyone who was there during the weekend with us.
Great.
It was so great to learn from all of you. Like all of you very intelligent physios who have so much knowledge and have touched so many pelvic floors and know what they're talking about. You know, I can't touch pelvic floors, but you know, I'm taking your experience. Let's close with that. So hopefully he'll be here with us in a couple of years, and you guys can sign up too.
Yeah. Great conversation.
Okay, bye.
Bye.